Welcome back. Welcome in. It's Country Roads Confidential at EerSports.com. This is a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaza, joined by Chris Anderson. Chris, we've just watched West Virginia roll to a season opening victory after halftime. We watched Mountaineers kind of stumble into halftime with some turnovers. And yet at the end here, I don't know if for some reason you weren't able to get to the football game today and people told you the final stats. You'd probably think, wow, this kind of went according to script. And how they get there, probably what we're going to talk about. In the end, though, you're talking 45 points, 42-point victory, 393 yards rushing, 625 yards of offense. These are like top five offensive totals from the past 10 years in the first game. Not going to happen every week, but if you're looking for a starting point, that was certainly it for offense. And then probably more importantly, I understand the quality of the foe, but that's a bad team that was made to look pretty bad by whatever West Virginia did on defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, everything we're going to talk about here is, let's remind you, the listeners and viewers, it comes with the caveat of, yes, we know this is an FCS opponent, but okay. So throw that comment in front of every sentence we say from here on out. But yeah, I think the defense, I mean, because not only, I actually think this was like a better test for the defense, not because Robert Morris is good, but not by any means, but because of all the turnovers by the offense, it just continued to put the defense in positions that they might otherwise not have seen. And they succeeded every single time, like just over and over and over again. Like, I mean, yeah, of course you can go through and pick out a play here, play there, a couple, things like that. But for the most part, that was an extremely consistent performance from the defense, even though they were put in a lot of tough spots.
Let's go into our what we can learn 3 minute video that we did on Friday. I picked out, we get an idea about their depth. We probably have some answers. It took longer than I thought on offense, but just the way that game went, they weren't going to dig very deep into offense. That means quarterback, running backs. They really want to make sure they won the game and got what they needed out of it. A lot of players on defense, and more importantly, early in the game too. Um, we'll see what happens against a much better opponent that had I would say, a more beneficial first week in Ohio University than West Virginia did, what they're getting out of this. But they put, I'm going to say that in like the formative parts of this game where it wasn't completely one-sided, which is probably about three quarters, about 30 players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say probably about that. I mean, that's maybe not that. Maybe like 25. That's two deeps. I'm foggy, Chris. Let's say, I mean, they went too deep in a lot of spots. If they went to like 25 players, I wouldn't be surprised. I would say they probably got close to it too deep in there. And they rolled a lot of people. And granted, that means they were playing a lot of offensive line. Maybe they weren't playing a lot of cornerbacks. Excuse me, defensive line. They were playing a lot of defensive line, maybe not rolling cornerbacks in, but they played a lot of defensive line. And as you noticed, when that game went along, their defensive line just kind of took over and pushed back and kept making plays there, which is a formula for what they want. Linebackers, there were some ultimately not really problematic trouble spots for linebackers early. Got them off the field, got some good plays, got the linebackers back on, and they played pretty well. The safeties looked like they knew what they were doing coming downhill and playing the run. There's a lot to like there with the defense, and we haven't even scratched the surface in the offense yet.
Yeah. Um, let's go. So you talked about the depth. I think what did I pick? Oh yeah, how much were they going to play a full true 11 on offense?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. What Scotty Fox, 2 carries on like what do he do? 5 plays, 4 plays that he was on the field. Nico Marchio, 13 carries when he was in the field. Jalen Henderson had 2 carries on his handful of plays that he was in there. Khalil Wilkins had 2 carries on like 2 plays, 3 plays. They're going to run the quarterback again. That wasn't surprising. Anybody that has seen a Rich Rod offense, including anybody that's seen a West Virginia Rich Rod offense, knows that the quarterback's going to be a prominent runner. I was just curious to see it because again, he talked about how he wanted to get them live. He wanted to get them live. Didn't quite get them as much live as he had hoped in preseason, but certainly did today. Certainly didn't seem afraid to put them out there. But can I tell you something that I feel like I learned today? I didn't predict it when we did that discussion about what do we think we can learn from this game. Am I crazy to say that I learned in today's game that at least coming into today's game, I'm not sure that, I mean, good plays by the guys behind him, but Rich Rodriguez only trusts one quarterback right now, despite his comments about trusting five. I mean, he went with Nico until the 12-minute mark of the fourth quarter, and West Virginia was up 30, 35 at that point. Like, I was pretty certain we might have seen Jalen Henderson like in the first quarter, like the second or third drive or something like that, coming into the game.
Yeah, I just want to be careful with that because the game was so weird in the first half that you owe Markio a chance to get what he can out of it. And three drives, really four drives, and without him contributing to the end, like the Justin Smith Brown fumble that ends a drive, the three turnovers end drives. That's four possessions that are taken out of Markio, and that's the guy who did. I don't care what they say. He earned the starting job. You want to give him as much as you can. They just didn't have a lot of plays in the first half,
Yeah.
and couldn't do a whole lot. So maybe you extend him a little bit longer. To your point, like didn't my thing here, and I think I know where you're getting at. Like, okay, you owe Markio this, or things aren't going well, key this guy in because he's your starter and he steadies things. Well, why isn't Henderson given that benefit of the doubt? Maybe you get an idea that one is ahead of the other right now. I think that's a fair question, and probably an observation. I'll say this: that position, but also some of the other skill positions. It'll be very tempting for Rodriguez to reach into the bag and try to get some of these guys on the field. Like Henderson just looks very different when he runs. Just that's a different gear. He doesn't dance around. He dashes. He's like a running back with it. Clay Ash is a bigger back, and maybe that's a good compliment to Jaheim White. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be on the field. He earned those RB2 carries. Sincere Bowers looked different when he was running. He puts that foot in the ground and goes. There are going to be offensive players. Can you get Oren Singleton involved more? Um, can you get there's just these skill position players. Justin Smith Brown is a really good athlete, but both those guys today had like mortal sins. They fumbled, and you're not going to get opportunities when you do that. But it's going to be really interesting for me to watch how Rodriguez does he fight the urge? Does he give into the urge to get this excitement, this juice on the field because it's an upgrade in some of those positions, not as a replacement, but as like a supplement.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm just curious about the one QB thing because you're right. I like your angle there of the hey, give him some more time, like just because of the four drives ending with the fumbles, and when he did well, or when he had an opportunity, he did well. My thought was just, man, this just feels like a hey, my plan was to switch drives and let Jalen Henderson, but the game was a little tighter than I thought, so I stuck with Nico, which I think tells you kind of if that's true, that tells you what Rich Rod's saying. And hey, why don't you ask Rich Rod? Oh, that press conference hasn't happened yet. We are recording this as the game is ending, so no opportunity yet to try to get an answer from him on that. But
That's my
that,
fault. You can blame me for that.
yeah. But anything else that you took, again like that we didn't talk about before, but maybe you think maybe you learned, or at least you've now put it on your checklist to watch in the next couple games.
Uh, well, the scheduling discourse ends, right? They don't beat a Power Four team today.
No. God.
Um, so yeah, this is a great year to have an FCS team. And then no, I think I probably led too early with my point. There's something to grow out of this, and there are good players in the offense who debuted today. And there's always a reservation, I think, for coaches or coordinators to you have your proven product, a veteran, someone you're comfortable with, someone who's been steady and a commodity in practice that you know and trust and understand. But there's that unknown to the side. He does something, he's this close. He just can't be 100% consistent, reliable, trustworthy. But man, there's times where he makes it look so good. It's hard to put those players out in the field, especially at the expense of another player. But you saw what happens when some of those guys got in the field. I understand second and third team FCS opponent and not a very good FCS opponent at that. You need to judge in a curve there, but it just looked different, and it's that's going to be really interesting. Also, just some other stuff here. Who was your freshman to watch? Ryan Ward, right?
Didn't play, did he? No,
I think he got
he
out there,
he
yeah.
was on special teams, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure on special teams.
and I think he got some offensive snaps too, and definitely outsnapped Dior Hubbard, which is not great.
Which is
Um,
funny because I think when we recorded that video, it was like, yeah, Diora Hubbard is the clear answer here. Like, Oh, oh
Well,
well.
still
Guess
not a
not.
lot of freshmen got touches today, except Scotty Fox, which I don't know what you do there, but we didn't see Max Brown at all either.
Hamstring injury.
Okay.
So that was it just occurred the other day. So he was I think he was supposed to be third string. Um talking about it with a couple people right before the game, and then I think the TV guys talked about it a little bit too during the game. But just happened this week, so new development there.
What's your thumbnail on Scotty Fox? I think a lot of people are going to see him and say, "Holy cow, he's Garrett Green." I don't see that at all.
No, I,
He's
I
not a runner, and yet he has a 59-yard touchdown in his third play from scrimmage today.
yeah,
But he's much bigger
I
and a
think
better
he
quarterback.
can run. He's built more like a runner. Somebody was asking me about this at the EerSports Tailgate, by the way. Well,
Mm,
not really the EerSports Tailgate, but EerSports was at a tailgate today.
mm.
Um, he is when you look at quarterbacks and you look at their bodies, and I'm saying this like as somebody who's scouting at these football recruiting camps, a lot of the quarterbacks that are coming in are kind of this tall, lean, little wiry, like, capable of throwing looking quarterbacks. And even the guys that are runner that are a little shorter, like a Garrett Green that are running, they look quick, athletic. Like I mean, Garrett Green was again like a pitcher and a shortstop and stuff like that and baseball. Scotty Fox looked different in the say like hips down to his knees zone. Like he has thighs and like a middle torso like Jaheim White. And that's what I compared like his upper legs to. I was like, yeah, Scotty Fox's upper legs look like Jaheim White's legs. Like he looks like a running back in the legs. He does not have the initial burst. Again, one of the things that made Garrett Green such a good runner was that initial the acceleration, the 0 to 10 seconds, that first 10 second or 10 yards of his running ability was just I I know people overuse this a lot, but I think it's close to elite. Scotty Fox isn't that on the acceleration part, but he's got those thick legs that can kind of trunk his way through some tackles and maybe get a few yards. But it's just like a different type of runner, I think, and maybe that's kind of what you saw in his run. I mean, he broke a tackle there, two tackles maybe, and got down the sideline. So for the
One,
cover, by the way, for the
oh
cover.
boy, if you had that and you were watching Jalen Henderson hit wide open guys and not catch the ball, that had to have been quite an emotional moment.
Then you don't have to put in a caveat here. If you had that, you're a degenerate. Okay.
Really?
if you, hey man, from one degenerate to another, betting a 38.5 point spread on a team with 80 new players against an FCS opponent, that's you're a wild man if you did that. A wild
Uh,
man.
some statistical figures here for you, Chris. 393 yards rushing since Rich Rodriguez left the first time, only bested three times since then. So his first game back is better than all but three games since he left on the ground. And then his predecessor topped 625 yards just once, and that was against Cincinnati last year. So some pretty good offensive hallmarks there. And again, you lose. I mean, they blow those numbers away probably if not for the three turnovers. And that's the one thing too about the turnovers. I don't know if they're flukish, whatever. I never heard anything about we're having ball security issues in practice. Never heard that, but maybe that's a continuation. Maybe that was a one day thing. But those are on big gains too.
Yeah.
That's the sad part about it. Like Cam Vaughn makes a great play, 26-yard play. Oren Singleton, like a 15-yard run. And like that kid looks good when he gets the ball and he's moving. You watch him run routes, he's twitching, he's open right away. And then the third one was Barnes, a nice little swing out on the like the bootleg for the left-handed quarterback. Nice play. This that helmet hits the ball, but those are first down plays, and you're thinking, boy, those drives continue on and they just chunk up more yardage. And um, do you, which I guess lead me to this one here. Do you have a read on the offense? Because I just think that first half was kind of fool's goldie. Like they were going to hang up big numbers, I think, sooner or later, and it actually happened later. Part of you can say, boy, they were really in the mud the first half. Were they? Lost the ball three times, lost
Yeah.
four drives on fumbles, and then they get away in the second half. You're like, oh, it looks great, but it might have been against just a gassed, overpowered opponent, and maybe that's somewhere in the middle too. I don't know.
Yeah. My thoughts were, and I guess they still are, this might be a top heavy, like a very couple player centric kind of offense, which again, I don't think that is surprising to anybody. I think a lot of people might have predicted that preseason. Um, Nico, Jaheim White, Cam Vaughn, and just kind of, hey, there you go. Those are your three. Ride those three. That's it. When they started making those turnovers, and again, one of those was Cam Vaughn, as you noted, but that was after he hurdled somebody and was, what'd you say, 26-yard gain. So, I think the only thing I get on him about was I think the drive a couple. Now it must have been a drive or two drives before because it was going the other direction. He spun. He caught a little hitch, spun outside towards the towards the sideline, and still had the ball on the inside, right next to the receiver defensive back. And I said to myself, "Oh my god, he's going to get that punched out if he keeps spinning like that with the ball on the inside." Well, it wasn't a spin out, but he did have the ball on the inside again when he's doing those plays and jumping over guys and multiple defenders. And that's just dangerous. You want it on the outside, keep it away from the defenders. If it does get punched out, it goes out of bounds. Instead, you keep it on the inside, multiple defenders there, gets punched out, rolls into the end zone, gets picked up for a touchback. So it is what it is there. But you could tell, I think, that, again, I'm trying to read between the lines of what Rich was calling and what was happening. And it was, hey, when it matters, it's Nico and Jaheim and some Cam Bond.
Mm.
Then it looked like things was, hey, all right, jumping out to a nice little lead. All right, let's try to pad onto it. Let's spread the ball around. And then there's a fumble, and then there's another fumble, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble. You come back for that first drive of the third quarter when it's 10-3, and there's probably a lot of curse words going on in the locker room at halftime. There's a little bit of sphincter tightening in the fans in the stands, and they go 8 of 9 plays where Nico Marchio and Jaheim White rushes.
Yep.
Touchdown. Done, done. It's like, all right, hey, stop screwing around. No more jet sweeps, no more throws. Just Nico's gonna run or Jaheim's gonna run. And Nico's gonna make a read. And one of those times he made a read and threw it to Grayson Barnes. But other than that, it was pretty much that.
Defensively here, I know we talked about some of the things that I mentioned right away that kind of answers some depth questions. Again, I'd be interested to see the snap counts and all that, but I was looking at their stats and who did what here. Oh, where they go? Um, a lot of guys got tackles, a lot of guys got TFLs, or quarterback hits. Not a surprise too, but I'm not really I'm not really hung up on the statistical achievements of that one. They looked so fast early on in the game, just flying. And like Braden Siders was the guy that kind of got my attention. Again, that's bold take, but he was obvious. But that's the guy running across the field to make some plays. Recovers the fumble when a cornerback comes in and hits the guy getting tackled. And then just constantly, those two middle linebackers running to the middle on blitzes, one or the other, just right through those A gaps and blasting the guards or the running back who's standing in front of the quarterback. That's, you can say hard edge, whatever you want, but that starts to get real annoying in the second quarter. And as that game goes on, third quarter, fourth quarter, like just, hey, will you take a play off, please? Hey, will you stop? And just no, that's what it is. And I guess to my point, my observation was if it wasn't Carrico and Wilson, it was like John Lewis in there and it was Ben Cutter in there. And if it wasn't Siders, it was Curtis Jones in there. I don't really remember seeing Marshawn or Eck. Oxley or Eck, God, I cannot get their names right. But just a couple guys that were in there doing the same thing, which perhaps these coaches are right that there's not a big gap between their ones and twos. But if the twos are going to come in and at least act like or play like the ones, you're really not going to have much of a drop off if that speed and that thump is what they aim for all the time. I think that was pretty promising. Again, probably what it's supposed to look like against an FCS team, but it looked like that too.
Yeah, I posted something in the thread about well, I didn't mention the Siders thing. I agree with you about Siders. Like I right away he was just kind of like, hey, there he is again. There he is again. And I know like one of those was like a fumble recovery. It's like, hey, he didn't make the hit. He didn't do it, but he just always seemed to be there, which is a good thing.
Mhm.
You want that with your defenders. That means they were following the ball, following the play, finishing the play. Um, Something I noted in the thread was on these rushes, you mentioned up the middle. Like sometimes, a lot of times when you're talking about defense and getting after the quarterback, you have guys, hey, this guy's come, somebody's blitzing from the left, somebody's blitzing from the right, somebody's coming from the middle. Oh, that's good because the quarterback doesn't know where it's coming from and they got to defend all. You know what's also cool? Like just overloading one spot and just being like, here it comes. Like
Mhm.
you were talking about the middle. Like I think Zach Alley called that up, dialed it up a handful of times where it was just all of a sudden you got Chase Wilson followed by Reed Carrico, followed by somebody else just right up the middle. Just like, here we go, pressuring up the middle, which is the best pressure. It's the hardest pressure to get because obviously tight lineman right there, but it's the best pressure to get because it's right in the quarterback's face. And they did it with a couple of guys right there. And I'm interested to see if that can continue against tougher opponents because I think that would be huge, obviously. And like you said, it's coming from different people. Like it was just, I think there was a little bit more movement and depth on the defensive side, which again was another reason why, as we approached the start of the season, I was like, hey, maybe this team's going to be a win or two better than I thought, because I think this defense is a win or two better than I thought, or deeper than I thought. And goes to your point back in last week's pod of just there might be a lot of guys on this team that can actually play. That how does Rich phrase it? Guys they can win with. I think there's a lot of guys they can win with on defense.
How many tackles do you think Braden Siders had?
Oh god. I know it's low, or I feel like it's low because I think early in the game I looked after that and I was like, man, does he have two forced fumbles or something like that, or two fumble recovers? I didn't know if that was him that recovered the second one. I think it was Carrico instead. Did he have like three?
One tackle.
One tackle.
But yet we're talking about him in agreement that he was moving around, and if he wasn't making the play, he was on the play and he was doing something good. And I don't know if that position will behave like it they wanted it to without Jamoy Robinson, but if you're going to get that effort, that engine, and again, Curtis Jones looked pretty good when he was in there too. I'm not sure what his stats were, but you watched him and he was running up and down the line. He was chasing plays and doing what he's supposed to do there. I think that's good. One more that we could begin to wrap up. Siders might be the pick here. I don't know, but was there a guy? I don't want to do the negative here, so we won't do the who were you wrong about. But was there somebody that you were right about that maybe we haven't talked about? But like, I want to see this guy because I'm interested. I wonder what he has, and now you saw it.
I mean, Chase Wilson, I think just the way everybody talked about him as preseason, especially as preseason was ramping down, finishing up. Because again, I think when like with all the interviews, like the early interviews at the very beginning of fall camp, but maybe it's because they just didn't know. I mean, Rich has been very open about like, hey, we're still trying to figure out who these guys are, and you might not figure it out till you get them in games. But they wouldn't say names, they wouldn't talk about position groups, they wouldn't say anything. And then once you started to slip a name out accidentally or on purpose, all of a sudden you heard his name a lot from the coaches. You heard it from Rich Rodriguez. You heard Zach Alley about it. I mean, Zach Alley talked about him for like 2 or 3 straight minutes one day at a after a preseason practice. So it was kind of like, oh wait, they keep mentioning this guy. Like obviously, I think most people assumed he was starting, that he was going to get first dibs at starter at one of those linebacker spots. But the way they talked about him as preseason wrapped up was like, hey, this guy might be a guy. And there he is leading the team with 6 tackles and sack, 1.5 tackles for loss, forced fumble, just kind of everything.
You did the who actually started in the season opener story, right?
Mm-hmm.
On defense, I'm going to stick with that, and then I don't know who else it would have been, but like I don't know that we kind of appreciated Hammond Russell. No, I just like, oh, Nate Gabriel's here, and oh, they could, who can they put there, whatever. In truth, it's probably him. He's probably the best nose. As a guy who's been around here for a while, and just what's your favorite Hammond Russell play?
Yeah.
You probably don't have one before today. It's just kind of been in the wash. But again, not on very good defenses either, and that's kind of an anonymous position. And when you're on a defense that's not very good, maybe you don't want to get noticed either. But he's in the middle today starting. That's not a surprise. But I wondered, is he there just because they don't maybe have a lot of options? That Nate Gabriel hasn't closed the gap. That whatever person they brought in just wasn't ready, wasn't there, wasn't as good as Hammond Russell. But does that mean that Hammond Russell's that good? I thought he played pretty well today. Like he moved guys around on the snap, and that's a smallish offensive line. I understand that they'll have a better opponent next week, but he was pretty active in there. And again, I'm not sure how many snaps he played, but it seemed like when good stuff was happening, again, that defensive line just kind of wore down Robert Morris pretty early in that game. It felt like too. Part of it is the offense letting Robert Morris's offense run so many plays, right? But I thought that he played pretty well. Chase Wilson was my pick, but as you're talking, I was thinking, all right, who else could it be? I just didn't know about Hammond Russell, and I think that was a good start for him because a couple of tackles, a couple of sacks, he gets his hand on the quarterback a couple times, he forces a fumble. Man, middle pressure is pretty important. If you're going to run those A gap blitzes, you're going to need your nose to do something. And we'll see what happens now because I'm sure that Ohio's coordinator was watching that and saying, all right, we've got to be really good guard, center, guard. Well, now you probably send your bandit and your nickel a bunch next week just to screw them up. And one thing I'm sure we'll talk about this week, Ohio played Jacksonville in the bowl game, Jacksonville State in the bowl game. They've got a pretty good idea what to expect from the offense. That's their like second most recent opponent. They just practiced for them in the bowl game. They haven't seen this defense. So I'm not sure how much Zach Alley had to or wanted to give away today, but some things he put out there, you might not see again next week.
Can I throw a stat at you that I don't know if is going to make people sad, mad, or happy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The second forced fumble for WVU happened at the 6 minute and 10-second mark of the third quarter. So 2.5 quarters in, two forced fumbles. Would you like to guess how many forced fumbles West Virginia has had in non-conference play over the last 3 years combined?
Two.
Two. Yes. So in 2.5 quarters, West Virginia, the 2025 WVU defense has as many forced fumbles as West Virginia had in the last 9 non-conference games.
Hmm.
Zero in 2024, zero in 2023, and two in 2022. So,
That's crazy. Also,
uh,
I'm just looking at this now. Robert Morris had 123 yards of offense. They had 81 at halftime.
yeah,
So they had almost half in the second half. When's the last time an opponent had 123 yards of offense?
yeah, who knows?
It's a bad one. I'm sure that'll be in the stats. Um, let's wrap up with this. How's the tailgate?
It was delightful. Again, of course, I've been raised and lived my whole life where you don't show up somewhere or host a party and run out of food or drink. You can get like ostracized for that. So I, of course, got wings and beer and meatball sliders for 500. Um, we didn't have quite that many, but it was good. We had a lot of people. Nice Feet did not reveal himself, at least not publicly.
Do you think he was
Um,
there?
I have a feeling he might have swung by. There's a lot of jokes about him being there, and I think somebody might have been him. But we'll see. But we had a lot of people stop by, bringing friends, bringing family members. Again, it was like a handful at a time, just like five, six, seven, pop in, chat for a while, have some wings, have a beer, head on back to their tailgate or another tailgate. Next handful come through, and again, I can't thank Halligan and his friends enough. They were excellent helping host to help organize all this. So thanks to them, kudos to them. That was a really good time. They got a great spot over there. So
Hmm.
maybe we'll keep doing it. Maybe everybody can just keep bugging Halligan for the next who knows how long.
Yeah, he made some friends with people who have my phone number. I've been getting a lot of texts about things he told
Oh
people.
yeah, one of the neighbors was of his tailgate was like, "Hey, Mike's not coming, but next time you have him on, ask him about that thing that he saw in the river." And I
Yeah.
said, "Well, you know what? I'll bring it up on the podcast. We'll see what he has to say about the podcast. Something about a fisher cat, I think is what they called it. Is that right?"
You want me to do this now?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So in the summer, I was out in Preston County. I was swimming in the Big Sandy, and I was out there by myself, which is probably a bad idea. My wife doesn't like that, but she can't cut work and go out there. And it was like 90 degrees out, so I went out there by myself. Water was really high, and I went down around this corner where there's really deep pools to swim in. And I'm walking the shoreline, and because the water's high, you really got to navigate not on the surface, but you're up to almost like in the caved area. And if you've been down there, you understand what I'm talking about. But just imagine you're not on rocks on the shore, but you're up more like walls that are now the shore because the water was so high. And as I was coming back to where I started, I just kind of turned a corner and you kind of had to like not scale the wall. You had to brace the wall like with your hands on it and shuffle to the right. So if you're watching this, it makes sense. But if you're not, imagine your toes and your hands are on the wall and you're kind of shuffling to the right. I did that and I made it through. And as I turned the corner, there was like a small bear like 10 feet away from me. And I was like, and it didn't flinch or anything. It just kind of turned its head like today's your lucky day, I guess, because I was a good distance away. I'm nimble too. Not that nimble because like I said, it startled me and I just stepped back and I slipped in the rock and like I fell down between two or three rocks, like 4 or 5 feet tops, and a crashed through like a log that people walk across, and then just like saw this thing looking at me from above, and I was like pushing off of the rock as fast as I could so I could get back in the water and float down the river. And I got across and I looked at it and probably wasn't a bear. It definitely wasn't a bear. We kind of figured it was a fisher cat. And everybody's like, those things you don't mess with either because they're like, I think someone said like they're small wolverines, which is true, but I was too quick for it, Chris. Couldn't catch me, but it definitely, I'm glad to see that that's brought people some humor. I almost died that day. Like if it wasn't from almost getting mauled by a wild animal, it was me falling down through rocks and logs and everything. And me saying it's not a big deal. That was not great news to my wife. And I was like, you're never going to believe what happened today. And she's staring at me, not amused by my story. So that definitely did happen. I hope they have a rain check for this too, because um, I can't help but notice a symmetry here, Chris. The first time since 2020 that West Virginia's 1-0. It's the first time since 2020 that I've been affected by COVID. I never had it before, and I woke up with it today. It's miserable right now. I'm pretty hopped up on cold meds, which is pretty fun. Um, but I wish I could have made it out there. I feel bad because I don't know how many people are looking forward to seeing me, but I was looking forward to going over there and actually meeting some people and seeing faces and names and maybe settling some scores that these people have with me. I also
Well,
wonder, like, if I have you ignored on the board, do I actually see you at the tailgate, or are you just like in gray? I don't
I don't
know. We'll
know.
never.
You have to ask. Do you have Jay Kazemska in on Ignore? Because he showed up with his Kroger fight times listed on his name tag, like I requested. So he was ready to go.
See, this is what
Um,
I missed. There was
see,
like there was a legitimate conversation at my house as to whether or not I could get like just wear a mask, and I was like, I don't know, that might be uncomfortable. People might not like that, and like we settled on I could, but I can't. Like you could do that, but you can't do that. So
yeah, there
uh,
was people like, we're outside. You can just stand a few feet away and we'll figure it out. But
yeah. So I was negative yesterday, by the way,
well,
and
missed
just
it
for
by a
some reason
day.
woke up and felt worse this morning, and they was like, you should do it again. I was like, why? The test already told me like sometimes there's false negatives. So then I took it. And I was like, wait, that's a false positive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 out of 3, but like rock, paper, scissors and see what happens. But no, it didn't happen. So this is bad for me now because, well, actually, thanks to Rich for moving his media days back from Monday to Tuesday because that gives me an extra day to like clear the fever,
Hmm.
have I think it's 24 hours without symptoms. So if I can have a no fever by Monday night, I'm good. I'll be back at work on Tuesday.
There you go.
Otherwise, if you see me, I've broken quarantine, and you should probably call the authorities. Anything else, Chris?
Ah, that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. I had some notes written down. No, no, no. I got the laughs of real quick yes or no's. Scotty Fox, the best third string quarterback West Virginia's ever had. These are posts
Oh
from
yeah,
people or tweets at me.
yeah.
That's what I want to run it by you.
Oh yeah.
Uh, is West Virginia an under? Well, this was a question at halftime when it was 10-3. Is West Virginia a legitimate underdog in Vegas when they go to Ohio next week?
Legitimate, like you can take him seriously. Like this is a legitimate underdog. You
No,
can.
no, no. Like actually, Vegas is going to be like Ohio minus 2.5.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't. I certainly don't think it's going to happen now that the game ended the way it did. But you had me thinking if it would have been like 10-3 at halftime, you might have get. But then I looked. Rutgers was 15.5. I knew the game ended up being a 3-point game, but I think Rutgers was 15.5, 18.5 point favorite.
It's
So
a different game and not a pump block touchdown too.
yeah.
So that's probably something to keep in mind there too. They didn't get blown off the field. They only lost by a score, and they shouldn't have given up one of those scores too. Again, a good team, continuity in the coaching staff. Quarterback play looks like it's going to be good again too. So we'll see.
All right.
Um,
Let's wrap it up. Get Rich Rod. Get our scouting stuff in, photos, everything else.
real quick, new Sundays. What's coming for you tomorrow?
Well, usually the plays that change the game would be leading things off, but for those that don't know, that takes tracks the in-game win percentage. Even when West Virginia was in trouble, their odds of winning the game never dropped below like 97%. So I'm not going to waste your time or mine writing that story. We will have PFF grades up. We will have Big 12 power rankings. Going to put a photo gallery up later. Going to reach out to some of the handful of recruits there. There were a few, not many. Again, they are like every sport apparently, because basketball and baseball and football all penciling the backyard brawl and all hoping to feed off of each other and the energy of the backyard brawl in 2 weeks.
It's shaping up to be a showcase game now too. I don't want to give it
Yeah.
away, but looking more and more like that every Saturday.
Uh,
Yeah. So some things we weren't expecting. That'll be out tomorrow. By the way,
COVID.
that guy's a winner. That guy's a winner. Yeah, I was not expecting COVID today. Yeah. And then yeah, we'll do some snap counts to go from there and see what else we can scare up, and then try to fill the day Monday with 3 things, a podcast, and then I don't know, but wait for that new depth chart on Tuesday and see what changes are reflected in what we saw on the field today. Until next time, I'm Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you then.